Here we go. Hi, everybody. My name is Godfrey Plata, pronouns he, him. I'm the Deputy Director at LA Forward Institute and LA Forward, 501c3 and 501c4 organization, respectively, supporting community building around issues that matter to Angelenos all over the city and the county. Today, we are very much going to focus in on LA City. We're going to hint some stuff to LA County. But welcome no matter where you are, as you are finding out more about ways you can reform the city and county charters on the ballot. And then we're going to take a look at some ways that you can actually continue to reform aspects of the LA City Charter in particular. It's kind of like our constitution of the city beyond the ballot as well. There's actually opportunities for you directly to get involved that we want to make sure you know about. This call is being hosted by LA Forward and Our LA. Our LA is a coalition that my colleague Jeremy is going to tell you about in a moment.
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Jeremy Payne, pronouns he, him, his. I've been in the chat, just letting folks know welcome and some of the prompts to get us started. But I'm a manager of political voice at Catalyst California, which is a member of the RLA Coalition, which stands for Organize, Unite, Reform Los Angeles. And yeah, we were very happy to be able to kind of co-host this with LA Forward and kind of share out the prospects that we have for charter reform in the city of Los Angeles. I have a few slides on who RLA is, but just kind of top line. We're a coalition of around 13 organizations that came together in response to the City Council audio leaks following the 2021 redistricting cycle, calling for a multiracial solidarity and unity, as well as action to ensure that city representation and governance works for the people of Los Angeles. So we're really excited to be co-partnering with LA Forward, who also is a member of the RLA Coalition, but to continue to work with the public, continue to work with Angelenos, and make the city as strong as it could possibly be, and work for us. And so, yeah, I will kind of get us started with just a few of our slides about LA Forward. I don't know, Godfrey, you already kind of covered a little bit about this. Curious if you wanted to share anything else about LA Forward before I go to the next slide.
We're good. You go to laforward.org if you want to find out more about LA Forward, and then passing back to you, Jeremy, to continue on the train.
And then RLA, just wanted to kind of show the organizations that are a part of the coalition. So you can see those organizations on the right side of the screen. We've hosted a number of convenings in person and virtually, just similar topics, raising awareness about the importance of being civically engaged and opportunities to do so beyond Election Day. And so we're really excited to be here and sharing out opportunities with this election and the Charter Reform Commission. In terms of today's kind of agenda, we have a number of items that you probably are aware of that you came here, were signed up to RSVP for, and that's to review some of the LA City Charter amendments and some of the priorities that LA Forward and RLA share together in terms of what is going to be on the ballot this year. We want to catch up the community members, you, on opportunities to be engaged beyond Election Day, and then also just update you on the newly established Charter Reform Commission. That's for the city of Los Angeles. So we're going to be talking about opportunities to really continue to change the city of Los Angeles beyond what's on our ballot. So that's a really exciting opportunity, and it's a bit unique. And we haven't seen something like this in the last 20 plus years. So a great opportunity to take advantage of. We'll kind of, you see the agenda right here. I won't go through in terms of the time allotments, but we do want to break it up between what's going to be on the ballot, having a Q&A, letting you ask your questions, and then we'll turn to the Charter Reform Commission, all that kind of talk about city charter, ballot measures, and have a Q&A for that as well. To get us started, I want to just kind of cover some definitions and some basics, some 101 on what's going to be covered here today. So the basics of ballot measures is that it's a law, issue, or topic placed on your ballot, the voter's ballot, to enact new laws, change existing ones, abolish prior laws, or recall an elected official. I'm assuming that most folks here have voted before, but if it's your first time, welcome. But yeah, this is kind of the go-to when it comes to ballot measures. You've seen a number of these at the state and local level. Most commonly, you see kind of a number of these come in through state ballot measures. It's a very similar process, but ballot measures all require voter approval. It's part of our kind of democracy institutional system that whatever law is kind of brought to the voters, it has to receive the approval of them. And so all ballot measures that kind of fall within this these guiding posts do require that. And a lot of the ballot measures that we'll talk about today are about the city charter. The city charter is kind of like our version of a constitution. Instead of the US Constitution, we have kind of our constitution for the city of Los Angeles. Ours was written in 1925 and really does establish kind of the ins and outs of how city government operates, from the departments to the elected officials, to the way that services are provided from various departments. Changing any aspect of that city charter is through a charter amendment ballot measure. It's intended to be very kind of not rigid, but set and can kind of unchanged unless there is voter approval to do so. That way we can continue to operate things in an effective and meaningful manner. But it does require changes, just as the US Constitution has changed since its first kind of inception, so can our Constitution. And so charter amendments for the city charter that we have can be placed on the ballot in terms of reforms and ideas that we have to modify, revise it. The easy way, which is LA City Council, just kind of pushes this through a majority vote if they have an idea. That still comes to the voters to approve, but it just is something that City Council can kind of fast track to get us a ballot idea. The harder way is through kind of a petition campaign where you probably see people outside of a metro station or outside a supermarket collecting signatures for something to appear on the ballot down the road. There's a big threshold for that, and that's why it's kind of the hard idea. It costs a lot of money, costs a lot of human power, and so that's one of the harder ways to get a ballot measure on the ballot. And now we have the newest way, which is through our Charter Reform Commission. So it's kind of like an in-between between the easy and the hard way, but we're going to be having an independent body that comes up with ideas, reviews the city charter, and explores reform ideas that the voters can then vote on come election day. So it's kind of a nice, unique new way that we can get changes done to our city charter. And so with that, kind of the definitions and basics, I'm going to turn it over to Godfrey to get us going on this ballot preview. You're going to hear a lot about ballot measures, so glad I was able to get this out of the way.
Yeah. So one of the things that we hope you've taken away just from even Jeremy's sort of a foundation setting for this call is that at the end of the day, in order for the city charter or the county charter to be revised at all, voters have to approve it. So on the ballot that some of you have been receiving already, or some of you have already turned in, like Tracy Porter, on this call, don't worry, you have until November 5th to turn it in, 8 p.m. There's already going to be opportunities to revise the charter on your ballot. So what's going to happen is for the next 8 minutes or so between now and 6:20 p.m., what we're going to do is we're going to walk you through ways in which charter revision is already in your hands. After 6:20, we're going to then open it up to some Q&A and discussion in case there's some clarifications. Jeremy and I are not pretending to be experts of everything, right? And so we can answer perhaps some basic questions, but we may also just turn the questions back to you all for any information you all may have or may want to research on your own beyond this call. And then really importantly, after that Q&A, there's so much more charter to revise, and that's what Jeremy's going to take us into after 6:30. So even if your main purpose on this call is to figure out what's on your ballot right now, we really want you to stay until at least 6:30 because there's literally hundreds of pages of how we are governed that we need to lean into, and we'll dip into that at 6:30. Jeremy, if you could click to the next slide. If you live within the bounds of LA City, there are 6 opportunities to revise the charter that are already in our hands. And so on your ballots, you'll see a lot of these like double letters if you're in LA City, DDLLHHIIERFF. And so for each of these are all opportunities put in front of us to revise the charter. We're going to focus primarily on DD and LL because the Our LA Coalition and LA Forward as part of the Our LA Coalition have been very much leaning into this idea of independent redistricting. So I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. But I just want to give a shout out to a couple of other things you're going to see in your ballot, the things that are not bolded on this slide. HH and II are opportunities to change some minutia of the charter that actually allow the city to do its work. So for example, in Measure HH, there's like a compilation of lots of things that are packed in there. Maybe most interesting being clarifying some of the roles of the city attorney and the controller's office. It says that the controller's office can perform audits of subcontractors that contract with the city, for example, or through city contracts. And then it also talks about the city attorney being able to subpoena folks to be able to do its work. So some things that people may be assuming that either office might be able to do, HH clarifies. II does some similar things where they say like, oh, like these different geographic areas and properties in LA City are actually considered parks. And that means they can be considered for recreational purposes. And everything that governs parks applies to these pieces of land, that kind of thing. So HH and IR are literally very bureaucratic types of things that honestly voters just need to be able to say yes or no to for the city to continue doing its work. Measure ER is about strengthening the Ethics Commission. There are many ways, of course, that an Ethics Commission can be strengthened. This does a little bit of the work, but maybe not everything that everyone ever wants ethics to be able to do in terms of their strength. In Measure ER, for example, gives the Ethics Commission a minimum budget in order to be able to do its work so that it's not completely dependent on city council deciding here and there, like how much budget it should get. Like there's at least a minimum budget that it requires. It also increases a possible penalty for various times in which there are ethics violations. Like as Jeremy mentioned, this constitution, quote unquote, or charter has been around since 1925, and a dollar was a little bit different in 1925 and through the years than it is in 2024. Some would even argue that these penalties ought to be even higher, but ER takes it a step in that direction where it updates what the Ethics Commission can do. FF applies literally to like 400 plus employees. That's it. Again, it is like something being asked of the public because it's required in order to revise a charter. It would give about 400 plus various positions, employees in LA City to transfer their retirement plans to fire and police pensions, which some would say have better benefits or things like that. So it gives them the option, a very HR kind of thing, to be able to do so. You all decide whether what you think about HH, II, ER, and FF, but those are the things that they put in front of you. We do want to focus on DD and LL in particular, because as you all may remember, 2 years ago, we all became aware of some leaked audio tapes on which we heard officials talk about gerrymandering the city and its lines during redistricting, and that they were using a lot of like self-interested reasons that were also racist, oppressive, etc. To further their particular plans. And some of you may have even seen the LA Times over the last 4 to 5 days or so. There have been a series of articles showing that the Attorney's General Office has actually began to investigate and may take action on the lines that currently govern our city as it is. Regardless of what happens with that investigation, we know that the city of Los Angeles and Angelenos have said, oh no, we cannot have politicians' hands on these lines anymore. If that has been the status quo, let's get rid of that. Let's create a commission of community members that are independent from those politicians. And that's what DD and LL do. DD allows for the city of Los Angeles. Yep, thank you so much for that, Jeremy. Measure DD allows for the city of Los Angeles to be able to be redistricted by an independent commission that literally cannot be made up of politicians or people who are even connected to politicians in those ways. And it's a public process where the public can even hold accountable who's being selected for these particular commission positions. The same thing is true for LL, except LL is for LAUSD. Right? The LAUSD is currently redistricted and finalized by city council members in LA City. This says, oh no, we won't have that. This says we want community separate from those politicians being able to finalize these lines and lead those public processes. And so our LA and LA Forward have taken yes stances very publicly on here. In fact, if you click one more, Jeremy, on Wednesday, you all are all invited to join a rally and press conference at City Hall. We've invited press there to make sure that there's these measures that are in our ballots, and too many Angelenos are intimidated by all of the text, frankly, and like, who knows what these things are, independent redistricting. We need to create some noise around this to make sure that we win it. It's a common sense solution that we know is true and proven because many other jurisdictions already use this. We just haven't transitioned yet to it. And so this is our time to transition to this form of redistricting, independent redistricting. And that way we'll have it in place for all future uses once we get more census data in and all of that. So if you can join us at 9 a.m. On the South Lawn, that's on 1st between Spring and Main, right outside of City Hall in that little park there. That would be great. We have donuts, signs, coffee, and water for you to make it as easy of a commitment as possible if you're able to take some time with us. With that said, it looks like Jeremy's going to put that into the chat box. There is also one county reform as well that you all may have heard about. So again, this is not the city anymore. This is the county, which is 88 different cities on it. This package of charter reforms for the county is called Measure G. And Measure G is a package of 13 different reforms all in one. That would revise the county charter. Again, the charter that governs all 88 cities within LA County. RLA, because it's a coalition of many different groups, has actually taken a neutral stance here because amongst its many groups are groups that support some of this measure and stand against some of this measure. And so it kind of averages it out to neutral for now. And so we invite you to do your own research here. Among the arguments in favor, right now we have 5 board districts of 2 million people each. People think 2 million's a lot. So there's a part of this ballot measure that would increase the number of seats at the supervisors board to go from 5 to 9. And that would make some of those districts smaller and hopefully invite better representation from folks there. There's also a county executive position that would be elected. So it introduces a completely new elected position that hopefully provides oversight over budget processes in a different way that the public can be connected to. So those are just 2 of the 13 things that are in this charter that some groups are excited about. There are also other groups who are thinking about how fast this was put together without as much community engagement. And for those groups, they wonder, why 9? Should it be more than 9? Are there other numbers that we should have investigated if community was brought in? So some groups are questioning that and are wondering if this is moving too fast for us to arrive at the type of charter revision that the charter reserves. And there are others who question exactly how much power someone who is elected overseeing 10 million people might have and what that means for elections as well. So questioning the idea of an elected executive. So some of the no groups do that. In our LA, there are groups who are saying yes, and there are groups who are saying no, and therefore our LA is saying, hey, we're going to stay neutral on this. We invite you to actually do your research on that. So that's the county measure. But again, for the purposes of this call, we're going to spend much of the rest of this call specifically on LA City charter reform. Because there are actually many opportunities to continue revising it that are right ahead of us. But at this time, Jeremy, if I think on the next slide, we're going to invite folks to just pause and see if there's any questions about those particular ballot measures. I want to be very clear with folks. If you're looking at your ballot, you see many more things on your ballot. These are just the pieces of your ballot in LA City and LA County that offer charter revisions. There are many things being offered to us that are not charter revisions as well, that are outside of the scope of this call. If you're engaged with LA Forward, we have many different ballot parties throughout the county and the city that you can find out much more about the many different things on your ballot. But for today, we're focusing in on these charter revisions. So any questions, Jeremy, you saw come in there?
Nothing immediately in the chat, but I do want to just open up to folks. If you want to just raise your hand or come off mute, we'd be happy to answer any questions. As Godfrey was kind of sharing, much of this work is about making informed decisions when it comes to these ballot measures and changing our city charter, kind of the law of the land. So we want to make sure that you feel informed and confident when it comes to filling out your ballot. So let us know if you have any questions. Godfrey, we have a question in the chat regarding Oh, yes.
I believe it's $15,000 is what it has been increased to. $15,000. And I'm gonna let's see, I'm gonna put in into the chat box a little primer from LAist about it as well, so that folks who are just wanting to read more, they do not take a position on it. They just kind of tell you more about it. And so hopefully that's helpful for folks here who are trying to make up their mind about it.
Thanks, God, for putting that in chat. And so, yeah, if folks have any kind of immediate questions, let us know. Yeah, we'd be happy to kind of answer those as those come in. But so you can still have an opportunity. We'll have a second Q&A. So if anything does kind of percolate, you can ask it again as we come to the conclusion. But I can just get us started for the most part now, and just continue to talk about, we have a lot that's going to be on the ballot this year. But I know that feeling that after you vote, you're thinking about what next? How can I make sure that what I voted on actually becomes law, or what I voted on actually continues to be discussed? And I'm happy to talk about charter reform in the context of our new Charter Reform Commission, because this is offering us a very unique opportunity, as I already shared, to really kind of keep the narrative going on, we need to fix our city government. We need to kind of create new opportunities for Angelinos to be engaged in policymaking. And I'm happy to share that Charter Reform Commission that we just established is going to be a great opportunity to do that. So in terms of what charter reform requires, we've been talking about really kind of changing the law of the land, the Constitution, all these metaphors, but really it's just about changing kind of the institution structural aspects of our city government. And to do that, there's some kind of understandings of what makes it successful versus what are some bad opportunities or what can go wrong. And so ideas that we have of what makes it successful is that it really does engage a wide, diverse kind of electorate. It talks to the community, it hears from them about what issues are important to them, and it works with them to really kind of connect the dots or the lines between what's an issue you're experiencing at a home and how is the city government responsible for that, or how can they improve that or make it easier for you to mitigate that issue. And it should be really focused on activating community-based organizations. It's no kind of secret or surprise that community-based organizations are really some of the best trusted messengers to kind of share about what's going on between their everyday lives of just kind of working their jobs, coming home, cooking dinner for their families, and what's happening in the city hall or in the state capitol. So community-based organizations have long been kind of the messengers of that, and making sure that those organizations are looped into the process, just as the general public is going to go a long way to make sure that folks are aware of every step along the way. And really, it requires some clear messaging to voters about what's going on, making sure that's transparent, that the information is accessible, and kind of continuing to just bring this along so it is seen in the eyes of the voters and the general population of Los Angeles that this was something that was done with good intentions. And it was done with the hopes of really kind of unifying and building out a stronger, better Los Angeles for us all. As I mentioned, the last major kind of edits to our city charter was done in 1999. And it's been done a handful of times before that, but it was only created in 1925 and edited a few times. And there have been some very big changes in the way that our society has operated from 1925 to now, even from 1999 to now. And in terms of what was some of the big edits back in 1999, it was really about kind of creating some checks and balances between council and mayor, and understanding that dynamic a little bit better. The creation of neighborhood councils, allowing local community members to kind of start serving in a way that has oversight over the local communities. And it really started to think about the idea of expanding public authority over planning and zoning, kind of taking it a little bit out of the hands of politicians and more into the hands of folks who live in the neighborhoods and are being impacted by zoning planning changes. And so that was some of the big focus of 1999's Charter Reform Commission, but there's so much more that can be talked about when it comes to charter reform and our city charter. So specifically about the LA City Charter, it covers a very broad range of ideas. I have 7 major buckets here, and this is just kind of encapsulates all the areas that's covered within the city charter that can either be updated, revised, or kind of completely kind of revamped with new ideas and ideas, or yeah, new ideas. So In terms of some of the buckets that we have here, we have city structures, we have our city departments, our elected officials, and kind of what is their relationship and responsibilities. We have more kind of just governance ideas about our council size, which has been talked about quite a bit in the last 2 years. Our election structure, who's eligible to vote in the city of Los Angeles, and can that be expanded? And how is the process outlined for the recall and removal of corrupt and problematic politicians? It entails public safety in our city charter in terms of the police commission, the duties of our police chief, the board of education, as Godfrey mentioned, the LA Unified School District. That is all captured within the LA City Charter. It even includes the multi-billion-dollar budget in the city of Los Angeles and that budget process of developing that budget, approving it, and everything that goes into contracts. Environmental justice, I talked a lot about land use and planning, but it's also Rex and Park, water and power. And there's also like employment provisions. There are hundreds and hundreds and thousands of city employees, and understanding kind of their retirements and pensions is all included within the city charter, so it's kind of as fair and equitable and transparent as possible. So there's so much more that can be explored, and we have that opportunity now with the 2024 Charter Reform Commission. As I mentioned, we had a little bit talked about 1999, but we're on kind of new terrain here. So when we start thinking about charter reform for the 2024 Charter Reform Commission that was just created just a few months ago, we can think of amending our city charter in two ways. I like to think about kind of additions and revisions. So revisions would be like revising our existing code, allowing us to kind of rethink and kind of streamline or update the way the language is listed from 1925 to now, just to ensure it reflects kind of the changes in language, the changes of priorities and responsibilities. And there's also additions where we can kind of think outside the box and think of new ideas of what if we had a new department that kind of took over public safety? Or what if we had a new process for approving planning and development in our local communities that give more power to Angelenos and less power to developers or contractors or politicians? So there's a lot to work with. And this 2024 Charter Reform Commission is going to be thinking about the revisions and the additions. So there's a lot to work with here. So this Reform Commission was just established a few months ago. And just for the folks here, general takeaway, what is it? What's the context? What are they doing? They're going to be reviewing that full city charter and in its entirety, which is hundreds and hundreds of pages, because it lists kind of everything that was required for the city of Los Angeles, from departments to city council to city services. And they're going to develop charter recommendations based off what they review and what they see as things that need improvements. The commissioners are going to be also soliciting input from the public about what improvements they would like to see as part of that review process. So trying to make it as kind of open and transparent as possible. That's going to be one of the primary duties of this Charter Reform Commission that we have. And to kind of ensure that it actually is equitable, it's actually listening to the public, they're going to create an outreach and engagement plan that's going to be publicly available for everyone to review that really does outline everything that they will do to ensure that they are talking to members of every council district, every neighborhood, and ensuring that there is a process for them to receive information, if it's in person, if it's online, if it's over the phone, to hear from residents about what issues they have, and is that an issue that can be resolved in the city charter or improved in the city charter. From there, they're going to be working on some policy crafting, working long hours to kind of start developing recommendations that they'll be sending to city council for them to review and approve. This isn't the final step. As I mentioned, these are ballot measures, and as we can remember from, I believe, slide 3 or 4, ballot measures require voter approval. So whatever is agreed upon between city council and the Charter Reform Commission, that's not the end of the road. It has to come to voters, and it has to receive our approval for it to actually be enacted or kind of implemented into our city charter. And so we're the final say. That's why it's important for us to be informed and also engaged throughout this entire process, so we're not surprised by anything that comes up. So that's a lot. So let me kind of map it on a timeline of how we'll get there. This is going to be a multi-year process. It's not going to be something that's just done by the end of this year, by election day. So in 2024, for the remaining few months that we have, we're trying to, in terms of City Hall, trying to get the Charter Reform Commission kind of seated with the individuals that are going to be on it. There's going to be 13 commissioners in total who are going to be on the commission, kind of working with the public, working with the policy crafting and sharing those with the city council. And 8 of them are going to be handpicked by members of City Hall, part of the kind of appointing authority. They're also going to be hiring staff just to ensure that there's enough kind of support to help them behind the scenes when it comes to developing these ideas and policies. And there's going to be an application process to select and hire 5 additional commissioners to serve on the commission. The distinction is important because the 8 that are politically appointed, again, are handpicked by the appointed authorities, which we'll get to in the next slide. But these 5 additional members are folks who are just applying for a job like you and me would for any job. So it's going to be a very open process where anybody who has expressed interest can submit their application and hopefully be picked to serve on this very kind of paramount, life-changing opportunity. And then in 2025 is when we get to some of the actual kind of hard work of the commission. They're going to be developing that community engagement plan. They're going to be reviewing the charter themselves internally. They're going to be reaching out to the public and do a more external kind of review. And they're going to be really kind of doing those deliberations and policy crafting. Because once 2025 is up, they have to start delivering some recommendations. So in 2026, they have to deliver those ideas, those improvements, those recommendations to City Council leading up to either the primary election in 2026 or the general election, so June or November 2026. As I mentioned, Council has to approve it, and once they get to an agreement between the Charter Reform Commission and Council, then we, the voters, get to see it on our ballots. Again, that would be either on the primary in 2026 or the general in 2026. So we have a bit of 2 years to work with here. And so a lot of work is going to be done in the next few months, and even more is going to be done in 2025. Turning this over to the commissioners, Godfrey, I want to see if I can pass this off to you to kind of talk us through who are these 13 individuals going to be.
Yeah, I want to start with actually like highlighting some of the pronouns that Jeremy was using. We use a lot of like they, and I want to like flip that script to like we. Like we get the opportunity to actually be on this commission. If you're on this call, I want you to think about like, could I be on this commission, or do I know the right person who could be, right? Like this commission is intended for our voices to be able to be the ones figuring out what the public engagement plan ought to be. Like, I don't want people on this commission who aren't thinking about a diverse Los Angeles. We need a diverse group of voices in this commission, or else we are not going to get the outcomes that we are probably wanting to seek in a future LA that's going to be driven by the governing principles in whatever the newly revised charter will be. And so let's talk about you all on this call. And could you be some of these 13 residents in LA to serve on the Charter Reform Commission? As Jeremy mentioned, 8 of these 13 will be appointed by 3 elected officials: Mayor Bass, former Council President Paul Krikorian, new Council President Marquise Harris-Dawson. And in fact, former Council President Paul Krikorian and new Council President Marquise Harris-Dawson have already made their nominations. Mayor Karen Bass has not yet made her nominations, and so her 4 positions are still up for grabs. And then between her 4 and the 4 that have currently been nominated, assuming that they are going to be confirmed by council, they are going to be the ones to select the remaining 5 people who will be joining them on the commission, and that will be on an application basis. So again, if this is interesting to you, if you feel like you could help us ensure there is a diverse set of voices on this particular commission, or you know folks who could be, you're going to see in a moment a set of different criteria to sort of go through in your head. Before we look at that criteria, I'd love Jeremy actually, would you be able to share what you know about like the 4 folks who have already been nominated by Council President Paul Krikorian, Council President Marquise Harris-Dawson, because like we can already think about like what other aspects of Los Angeles do we want represented to join these 4 people who have already been nominated? Jeremy?
Yeah. So as Godfrey mentioned, 4 people have already been kind of nominated, 2 have been confirmed. That includes Mona Fields, who is the former president of the League of Women Voters. For those that aren't familiar with the League of Women Voters, oh, sorry, let me just fix this real quick. They are a civil rights oriented organization, much like many of the organizations that are serving in the city of Los Angeles, that are really about expanding awareness and education when it comes to civic engagement, as well as opportunities to expand kind of democracy. And so that is one of the appointees. We also have our other nominees, sorry, that include Jorge Nuno, who has been nominated but not yet confirmed. They are a South LA resident who, if you're familiar with the Big House, is kind of a social incubator hub for nonprofits as well as BIPOC businesses in the South LA region. And Ted Schlageter, who is a former City Hall employee working for various council members, but also now is with the Metropolitan Water District, and formerly served as a advocate for climate justice environmental organizations here in the city of Los Angeles. And the fourth individual, now I'm totally blanking, I apologize for this. Godfrey, I have Mona, Ted, I have, oh no, Ted Stein. There we go. That's what it was. We have Ted Stein as well, a former commissioner, longtime kind of City Hall insider. I want to use that word kind of loosely, but individual who's worked on various commissions in the late 90s, early 2000s, and has been kind of a part of City Hall operations. And so another individual very familiar with the city charter and the ins and outs, as well as the various departments here in the city of Los Angeles. And so those are the four individuals who are selected. I will say the executive director, which is a staffing role, has also been identified. This is going to be the deputy chief of staff for council member, former council president, Paul Krikorian. She was named Anna Hovotskian, and she is still waiting confirmation, but that is the process of still kind of going through in terms of who are some of these folks that have already been identified, hand-selected, and where are some opportunities for us to kind of fill in some of these other spaces with more voices, different backgrounds, as well as different work experiences.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. So again, to recap, of these 13 positions that could literally lead the way on revising our equivalent of a constitution of a city, we have 9 more spots that we can influence. And you heard sort of a little bit of the makeup of the types of life experiences that people will bring on the table. We want to make sure that different geographies in LA, different generations of LA, different racial and ethnic groups in LA, different genders in LA are represented on this commission, and hope that you all are thinking that that could be you or somebody that you know, either through your work, through your neighborhood, through your organizations, or whatnot. If you could click, Jeremy. Yes, the executive director is a political appointment. Jonathan, that was correct. And there's been a nomination, as Jeremy mentioned, by the mayor and council president, Marquise Harris Dawson, former deputy chief of staff for former council president Paul Krikorian's office has been nominated, subject to confirmation by the council. Of the sort of open positions that do not have to be nominated by Mayor Bass at this point, there are 5 positions that can be applied for. So do not have to be appointed by Mayor Bass or either the former or current council presidents. They do have to be approved by a majority of the council, as it says on here, but there will be an open application process. So again, really want to make sure that folks on this call are trying to figure out how do we get ourselves or community members who could be great for this to be throwing their hats in the ring. The application portal is not yet open for this particular set of applications, but it could be soon. And so we want people to start thinking about this. As Jeremy mentioned, this commission role will be for at least the next 1.5 or so years, if not longer. And so these are really great. If you could click, Jeremy. This is really great for folks who understand that, like they have a stake in LA City and that they are that fulfill these particular initial eligibility criteria. So they have to be a City of LA voter. And so like I want to emphasize that it says voter there, and we know what that means for like citizenship, things like that. So City of LA voter. They cannot be a registered lobbyist, elected official, or contractor doing business with city. So, like have some removal from city processes in those ways. And then they can't be related, right? Like, I don't think anybody on this call is related to any of the appointing authorities. Maybe, surprise me. But, if you're related, then you shouldn't apply to be one of these commissioner positions. So there is otherwise a wide spectrum of eligibility. If you could click, Jeremy. The type of person we're wanting to see again, will need to be someone who can actually make weekly or biweekly meetings as part of their time commitment here. And so, like we want someone to take this serious. It's not just somebody who's like good at opining. It's somebody who will value public engagement and ensuring that public voice is a part of the process as many steps of the way as possible through this. The charter is literally hundreds of pages. And Jeremy showed a slide earlier about all the different issue areas that could be revised here underneath that. Environmental justice, housing justice can be attended to here. Criminal justice can be attended to here. How our city council operates, how they get their power, how they wield their power, how they're held accountable to power. All of those different things are in our charter. And so it's incredibly important that we bring people in who are going to be critical of what's in there and what the status quo currently is and what the impact is of that on marginalized communities of color, anyone who does not often get the space to impact this document. We literally have a once in a century opportunity to make this happen. And so would love to make sure we are getting the right people in there. And even when we get people in there, our job is not done as community. We're going to make sure that we are there at every step of the process, wanting to make sure that our interests, our questions are guiding and driving the work of this commission. And hopefully we'll do so with some allies in there as well that come through this process. Jeremy, I think I passed back to you next.
Yes, let me go ahead and drop the newsletter into the chat so folks have access to that. Oh, this seems like a long link, but there we go. That is a way for folks to kind of stay engaged as well as to hear from RLA about the kind of developments of the Charter Reform Commission. We're keeping a close eye on this. And so if you want the latest updates, that newsletter there is a great opportunity. And so what's next for LA Forward and RLA? So we're going to be helping applicants secure spots on the commission. As Godfrey mentioned, we're looking to really identify some folks who could spend some time out of their year in 2025 looking at the city charter. We promise it's not as daunting as it seems. You're going to be in good hands with the staff as well as organizations like RLA and LA Forward pitching in to share resources and ensure that everyone's set up for success. And so we want to help you throughout the process. If you're interested, be one of those commissioners. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're also going to be hosting community engagement and education workshops. We understand not everyone has the time probably to be a commissioner, but we still want you to be engaged and interested. So if there is a opportunity to let you know about all the wonderful things that we're thinking about when it comes to some of the reform ideas, Godfrey mentioned criminal justice, environmental justice, as well as education, we want to make sure that we hear from you about those ideas. So we're going to be hosting either virtual or in-person convenings throughout the city and county of Los Angeles, depending on the scope that we're looking at, and using that as kind of a opportunity to hear from you, to bring City Hall right to your doorstep. And we can then kind of take those ideas and translate them or bring them back to City Hall to save you some of that headache. And then we're going to be conducting a lot of research and analysis on these ideas that we're hearing from you. We want to make sure that we're informed in terms of this process, but also informed with the ideas that we're putting out there. So if we understand that one of the issues impacting us is delivery of services, we want to be able to kind of look through the data, look through the reports, and offer solutions in addition to the issue that we identified. And so we're really excited to be working alongside the community members as we have done throughout the last 2 years to really kind of take your voices, package it with research and analysis, and then share that idea to City Hall so they are completely blown away about how prepared we are with our ideas. So that's what we're coming with in terms of what's next for us. In terms of what's next for you, this was a ballot preview for the first half, and so we want to make sure that you're voting by November 5th. Some of us have already voted, amazing. Some of us have already identified our plans, also awesome. But for those that are still waiting on your ballot or looking to do some more research, we love that, but make sure to vote by November 5th. Also sign up for our newsletter. The RLA newsletter, I dropped it in the chat, is a great way to be informed about the Charter Reform Commission, but RLA has been heavily involved with the IRC ballot campaigns. We also have been heavily involved in all the other kind of charter conversations and governance conversations in the city of Los Angeles. And now, as we see, expanding into the county of Los Angeles. And so if you want to be engaged or stay in the loop about what's going on, the best way is to sign up for that newsletter, and we'll continue to send out monthly updates of the progress we're making and opportunities to get plugged in. We also want to have you consider what charter reforms or issues are important to you. So after you vote on election day, if there's something still lingering as an issue, think about it, and we want to hear from you. So if it's the in-person convening or another webinar, we want to make sure that we have an opportunity for you to kind of share those with us, because as I mentioned, we want to hear the issues that you're experiencing, your relationship with City Hall or the Board of Supervisors, and really understand the dynamics and what's working, what's not working, so we can really work from there. And then spread the news. Let others know that you attended this webinar, that you know that there's a Charter Reform Commission coming. You don't have to be an expert. Godfrey and I aren't even experts ourselves, but it's still kind of in the process of spreading information, raising awareness, because collectively, as we start to kind of become aware of what's going on, a lot of the shady happenings that are happening behind closed doors, that kind of goes away when we have a close eye on things. So spread the news, invite others to learn more, and invite others to attend any future RLA events, so we can continue to build this amazing coalition of Angelenos and community-based organizations working to make the best and greatest Los Angeles that we can. And so with that, I'm going to turn it to another kind of Q&A opportunity. Some questions have been coming in the chat, and Godfrey and I have been trying to kind of keep up with all that coming in, but I wanted to see if anybody has additional questions, ideas, thoughts, reactions to anything that you heard so far before we officially kind of close out this hour webinar. Tracy, I see your hand up. Feel free to unmute yourself and share.
So hi y'all, how you doing this evening? As far as the commissioners and whatnot and so forth, and you said it's a year, and it could be a year and a half to two. Is this is this a volunteer thing? Yeah, I don't
I
know if you
believe
mentioned it already, because
so, yeah. I do believe it is volunteer, which you can imagine is hard for working folks to fit this in. Does anybody have a different read on the opportunity that I might not know about?
Compensation has been spelled out. That's still something that can be developed in the budgetary process down the road, and that's something that could be supplemented to the existing Charter Reform Commission. But at the time being, it is going to be a volunteer position. And in terms of the amount of time commitment, that's still kind of a guesstimate at this time, as we kind of learn more. But that's something that we're going to be advocating for, because we do understand that it would be a barrier for a lot of the folks and the voices that we do want to see on the commission, and want to ensure that it's not just the folks who can finance themselves offline or off the other time to be on this commission. So that's something RLA is going to be kind of prioritizing in some of our ongoing advocacy.
yeah, because I think I heard that the LA County is kind of doing something similar, and they were both also saying, to make sure that it's equitable and that people, not just, people that, like you said, can self-finance, can be on these commissions, because the folks like me, you, and everybody else, our voices need to be heard. But unfortunately, because of the time that these things are going, or what have you, or the fact that they want all this time to be put in, and people can't afford that. So I think I could be wrong, but I'm going to a LA County Board of Supervisors meeting tomorrow. But I know that's something that I've heard down the pipeline, that that's something that LA County is also trying to look into doing, and making sure that it's paid. and not all volunteer. Because of course they're going to work the crap out of the volunteers. And the paid folks just say, "Oh, okay, let the volunteers do it. They got plenty of time." That's
Mhm.
just my take.
And that's true of like some of the city commissioner positions as well. There are some commissioner positions that have some compensation, and there are others that do not. I know we're trying to vote in the independent redistricting commissions through Measure DD and LL, and there has been a lot of advocacy to ensure there's at least some compensation for those who are redistricting through that particular commission. Unfortunately, that to Jeremy's point, I think his phrase is really right. Like it has not been spelled out here. Could be a place for advocacy at this juncture. Definitely important. Jonathan?
Will there be alternate commissioners chosen at the outset, or like what's the plan? I mean, it's like a year and a half long commitment. What's the plan if someone resigns from the commission?
So that level of kind of like code of conduct, as well as kind of like the housekeeping of the commission itself, is something that's going to be developed among the 13 commissioners. And so there immediately won't be alternates, but it could be up to them to identify opportunities to have alternates, or to kind of spell out what does resignation for the commission look like and the replacement process look like. At the time being, we just kind of have like the bones of the Charter Reform Commission, and we're trying to get the people, the staff, and kind of the operations to figure out those kind of next steps. So hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have all 13 commissioners. We'll have at least, maybe I'll be optimistic. Hopefully by the end of this year, we have all 13 commissioners identified, and they can really start beginning to spell that all out for us. So we understand that process, and others can start to apply if they want to be alternates or not.
I think part of what's also great about this conversation is we're encouraging folks here to consider themselves as possible applicants, or folks that you may know in your network to be possible applicants. Like why it's really great to have a community-driven application drive here is then we can cheer for each other, right? Like we can actually like advocate to ensure that community voices that are tied to this conversation outside of City Hall are ones that we are trying to create an echo effect for the folks who are going to be choosing who's the commission. So we encourage you to be public and not secretive about your interests. If you're on this call, it's likely you're with an allied organization or movement or community in some sort of way. So would love for you to express your interest so that we can support your ability to get on and then your ability to do good work for the public. Any other questions? I know we're down to the wire. And I know there is another LA Forward Zoom after this for folks who are with our unarmed crisis response working group.
If not, I can keep us going forward and just kind of have a thank you for the folks who have stuck on this call to learn more about your ballot, as well as opportunities to decisively engage. As I mentioned, it is a lot that's going to be coming at you on this ballot. And then in terms of the opportunities, there's even more. And so just ensuring that we stay informed, that we don't get burnt out, and that we see this as an opportunity to really kind of seize policymaking, seize kind of the operations of our democracy to ensure that it works for us and it's not seized by corrupt interests, special interests, but the interests of Angelenos. And so I just want to thank you for taking the time to be here and learning from Godfrey and me about something that we have been very passionate about for the last 2 years, and probably even longer than that. This recording will be made publicly available on the RLA page as a resource if there's anything that you miss, as well as we can put our contact information in the chat as well if you have any kind of outstanding questions that you don't get to. But again, I just want to say thank you and maybe turn to Godfrey to see if you have any closing comments.
No, that's it. Thank you to our partners at RLA, especially Jeremy for putting together a lot of today's presentation, making sure it gets out there. I know it's also built on the work of a lot of folks who have iterated on this conversation for the last 2 years, getting us to this point. So shout outs to like Candace, Ale, Aaron, other folks on this call, Nico, who I know have like done bits and pieces that have transpired into today's conversation. So thanks so much. And again, think of yourselves and think of your network as we have just the next few months to go beyond the ballot and position ourselves to be really strong at this commission as well. Thanks, y'all. Bye. We're going to stop the recording.